All right, so welcome everybody. I'm very happy to be there today with you to give you this kind of introductory webinar on the Directive for Alternative Fuels Infrastructure, also nicknamed DAFI. So we'll start with a quick introduction on the genesis of the proposal, where it's coming from, why the EU or the Commission has put that on the table at the time. We'll go very quickly through the Clean Power for Transport package, which was the overall initiative, including DAFI. Then take a quick look at the proposed directive by the Commission, article by article, and assess what are the main changes if you compare it to the final text, which was published in the official journal. Then we'll take a look at the implementation of the directive and what's coming up next. So without further ado, let's start with the genesis of the proposal. Maybe one thing to mention before also is that, of course, in the 45 hours webinar, you can only expect an introduction. So I'll try to be as precise as possible. But if you're already an expert on the topic, you might see some information being shortened or not, let's say, fully complete, but that's just for basically the purpose of the webinar. All right, so the genesis of the proposal. So if, like some of you probably recall, in 2011, the EU has adopted its overall strategy for the transport sector, called the White Paper on Transport. That is giving its priorities and objectives for the Horizon 2050. And it sets objectives, so in terms of emission, air quality, among others. In that white paper for transport, what you could find is that by 2030, the GHG emissions from transport should be reduced by 20% compared to the 2008 level, and by 2050, it should be reduced by 70% compared to the 2008 level. Then, among the other objectives that were in the white paper for transport, you could find the fact that the Commission wants to halve the use of conventionally fueled cars in cities by 2030, and totally phase them out by 2050. And for the logistics, by 2030, they also want the major urban centers to be CO2 free. So this let's say is when it comes to emissions. There are obviously other strategic issues that the Commission intended to tackle in the white paper, mainly oil dependence. Since 94 at the time of the white paper, obviously, 94% of the energy consumed in transport was oil, of which 84% was imported, meaning a bill at the end of the day of 1 billion a day and a 2.5 GDP deficit in the trade balance. So let's say to counterbalance this oil dependence, the EC, the European Commission, wanted to increase the share of renewables from 5% at the time to 10% by 2020. And also develop the appropriate infrastructure for these renewable energy to be supplied directly to the customer via refueling, recharging points. So these were, let's say, the objectives laid down by the white paper back in 2011. It has been reviewed since, but we won't touch upon that today. Among the key actions that the Commission pledged to propose, you could find already a sustainable alternative fuel strategy, including also the appropriate infrastructure. That was Initiative 24. Rules on the interoperability of charging infrastructure for clean vehicles, and guidelines and standards for refueling infrastructure. So these were part of Initiative 26. So already in 2011, the Commission made it clear that it would put something on the table. It took them another 2 years to go through the usual process to draft a new proposal, consultation phase, etc. And on 24th of January 2013, the Commission published the Clean Power for Transport package. So in this package, what you could find was basically a communication which was laying out the comprehensive European alternative fuel strategy. That's basically the big strategic orientations and the roadmap for the next years onwards. A proposal for a directive on the deployment of alternative fuels, recharging and refueling infrastructure, which is the main point of our webinar today. The usual impact assessment and a staff working document which was setting out the needs in terms of market conditions, regulation, codes, standards for LNG in the shipping sector. So today we'll focus mostly on the road transport. I'll cover briefly the other aspects that were part of the DAFI when it comes to shipping in particular. What was the context when the proposal was published? As you can see, back in 2011, when the Commission pledged to publish this proposal, the number of electric vehicles sold across the world was extremely limited. You have roughly 20,000 units in the US, 7.5 in Japan, and no EU country, be it Germany, France, Norway, or the UK, which were the most advanced at the time, had more than 2,000 units sold per year. So as you can see, it is extremely, extremely low. And when it comes to charging infrastructure, obviously it's the same story, meaning that you have at the maximum around 2,000 charging points, well, even less actually, in the most advanced countries. So that is Netherlands, France, and Germany, obviously. So this is basically the context at the time. So in the Clean Power for Transport package, so the communication was laying down the challenges and the roadmap for the institutions to foster the market development of alternative fuels, and they identified a few factors that were holding back the market and explaining this very limited numbers of electric vehicles on the road at that time. That is technological commercial shortcomings. So we're speaking here about battery autonomy, the high retail cost of the vehicles, etc. Lack of consumer acceptance. So the perception of the reliability of these new technologies, the fact that there was no second-hand market where you could basically sell your car to get let's say some money to buy the next one, and obviously also missing adequate infrastructure, as we just seen. Another important dimension is the fact that the package and the communication especially evaluates the main alternative fuel options. As usual with the Commission, it was meant to be technology neutral, but it also acknowledged that there is no single fuel solution, but that all main alternative fuel options must be pursued with a focus on the needs of each transport mode. So you had this small graph that I just copied paste here, where you can see that basically what they try to do is based on each transport mode to provide which option was the most relevant. So if we take, for instance, road transport, so it's divided between short, medium, and long range, and you see here that basically the gas, the biofuels, and the hydrogen are considered as relevant for the three ranges, and electricity at the time again only for short range trips. Now, what the whole package was about was to answer the so-called chicken and egg problem, which I already started to touch upon in the previous slide. What are we talking about when we say this chicken and egg problem for e-mobility? Well, basically, it's the fact that you have a kind of vicious circle where consumers don't purchase electric vehicles. Therefore, the industry cannot make them at a competitive price because there's no economy of scale, and they don't have also the means to invest in R&D. And because there's no competitive price, there's also no charging infrastructure being built to the insufficient number of vehicles. And again, that means that consumers are afraid they won't be able to plug their EVs, so they don't trust the technology, and they don't buy these models. And so it can go on forever and ever. So the point for the Commission was really to finally break down that problem. And the solution that they put on the table was to ensure sufficient infrastructure coverage, to ensure economies of scale on the supply side and network effects on the demand side, to basically change this vicious circle into a virtuous one by also fulfilling technical prerequisites and improving consumer acceptance to finally foster the market uptake. So it focused on the fuels where they identified as being the ones where failures on the market were particularly relevant, and that is electricity, hydrogen, and natural gas. In practice, that means that the Commission intended to tackle two things. One is to foster the infrastructure, and the second one was to have common technical specification to ensure interoperability and especially on the plugs. But we'll come back to that afterwards. So if we look at the proposed directive, and I insist on the proposed directive because that is the text from the Commission, not the final outcome of the codecision procedure. So we're going to have a look at it article by article to see what was proposed at the time, at the start of the procedure back in 2013, and what was the outcome a year and a half later, once the Council and the Parliament did their job. So Article 2, I didn't put it in because it's the definitions. The only thing to keep in mind is that it offers a distinction between slow or normal recharging points, so the ones between 3.7 kilowatts up to 22 kilowatts, and the fast ones, which are the ones considered above 22 kilowatts. Article 3 required each member state to adopt a national policy framework for the market development of alternative fuels, including hydrogen, and requested them to submit it every 2 years. Annex 1 was laying down the provisions for the elements of this national policy framework, and you had, among others, among the essential elements, regulatory framework that must be put in place by the member state, policy measures for the implementation of the framework, which had to include direct incentives, so mostly on taxation, but not only, like parking space, etc. So all the measures around incentives. Deployment and manufacturing support with a yearly budget for each transport mean, be it road, rail, etc. An R&D budget per year dedicated to alternative fuels, and targets for 2020 by means of transport, and national targets per year. So this was, in short, what the policy framework was requesting from each member state. We'll cover it a bit more in detail when we talk to Annex 1 afterwards. Article 4 was the essential, or one of the essential part of the proposed directive. Why? Because it was setting for the first time minimum targets for electric transport and plugs for each member state by the horizon 2020. So meaning that there was a numbered objective for the first time in terms of recharging points per member state. So I'll give you a look at the table that was proposed by the Commission, but if you just take, for instance, France, so the objective was to have almost 1 million recharging points by 2020, and 10% of these had to be publicly accessible, so meaning publicly funded, obviously, and that is so around 100,000 publicly accessible recharging points by 2020. Another very, very important dimension, as I was mentioning before, is after a very long time and where you had several connectors standards that were competing with each other, mainly Type 1, Type 2, you have another Type 3, CHAdeMO for that was coming from Japan. The proposed directive was asking all the recharging points to be compliant with connected Type 2 by 2015 for the slow points, so as I mentioned before, up to 22 kilowatts, and by 2017 for the fast ones. So the aim really was to put an end to the competition between plugs types, and to ensure that a vehicle could be plugged to any recharging point across Europe, whatever manufacturer, country of origin. And that is I think the essential part of the Commission proposal, together with the minimum number of recharging points. Among the other things, so all the publicly accessible points had to be equipped with intelligent metering systems to generate data, and also that no discrimination should be made based on the electricity supplier chosen by the customer, his country of origin, his or her country of origin, and that the electricity price to charge the vehicles had to be reasonable. So that was the Article 4 as proposed for electric, to foster electric transport. Article 5 was tackling hydrogen, which was also, there were only a couple of stations in a mostly experimental at the time of the proposal. So what the Commission put on the table was that there should be hydrogen refueling points in the countries where they already had some, meaning the countries that were already investing in that technology, a sufficient number of them, and with distance equal or lower to 300 kilometers between each point. So it's not overly ambitious, but it was at least putting some kind of mandatory target for hydrogen as well. Article 6 was about natural gas. So again, very shortly, it was for both maritime and inland transport, as well as for the heavy-duty vehicles, which this was deemed the solution for this type of transport. So it was requesting LNG and CNG to be available by 2020 and 2025, depending on is it maritime or inland port, along the 10T core network. For heavy duty, same. So you had an objective with publicly accessible refueling points to be established between within distances that weren't exceeding 400 kilometers by 2020. So this was also a key to foster the development of alternative fuels, also for the freight. And the same provisions, but 150 kilometers this time for the CNG heavy duties by 2020. When it comes to biofuels, there is another text that is addressing biofuels, and that is the ILUC, for those of you who are familiar with it. But what the Article 7 was proposing was to provide clear information to the consumers on the compatibility between biofuels and their vehicles. So there were labeling provisions, and member states were requested to make sure that the consumer would be able to find information easily at pumps, refueling stations, dealerships, technical control facilities, in-vehicle manuals, on the vehicle itself for the new vehicles, and after the first technical control for the old ones. And this information was supposed to be based on a standard that was to be developed by the Sensenelec and a mandate from the Commission. In case of absence, the EC could have adopted complementing measures. The main purpose for this article was coming from an issue in Germany mostly, according to the Commission itself, where the consumers, because of a lack of knowledge or information, were not making any use of E10, and because they were suspicious of it and their compatibility with their vehicle's engine. So this was not, of course, exclusively addressed at Germany, but partly. Finally, to conclude on this review article by article, so you had 3 annexes. Annex 1, which I mentioned already, was setting up the content for the national policy framework and listing every aspect which should be included in the member states reporting. So again, direct incentives for purchase of alternative fuel means of transport or for the infrastructure, the tax incentives to promote these alternative fuels, the use of public procurement, and the measures that were to be adopted to support the market uptake, the demand on the site, the support on the demand side with non-financial incentives. We're talking here of access to restricted areas, parking, dedicated lanes, like you have, for instance, now in some countries like Norway, where you can park for free. You can use bus lanes if you have an EV, and also yearly public budgets allocated to the infrastructure deployment to support manufacturing plants or fuel technologies, alternative fuels, research and development. Annex 2 was listing, so the objective for each country in terms of both recharging points overall, plus the ones that were deemed to be publicly accessible. And you have here the formula which was used by the Commission, and which was actually heavily criticized afterwards for not being very scientific. But it was basically the car stock of the member state divided by the car stock in the EU, the share of urban population in the member states divided by the one in the EU, and that would give you
then well, sorry, wouldn't give you, but they would then use the EV stock multiplied by the EV stock of the EU by 2, and you would then end up with a number of charging points per member state. Well, actually, sorry, I was meant to share with you this first. So this is the table that the Commission presented itself. So you can see again in the first column, well, the second column, the existing infrastructure back in 2011, number of charging points. The target, which was proposed by the Commission in its proposal by 2020. And they also listed the plan that were announced by the member states, so without any external constraint. So why it's a bit tricky is they compare the targets of the member states with the ones for publicly accessible infrastructure, whereas the member states' plans were not necessarily taking only into account the publicly ones, but that's some PR by the Commission the aim here is basically to see that if you look at the targets that the Commission was proposing and their own commitment from member states, it was actually reasonable. Like, let's take, I don't know, the UK, the Commission was proposing 100,000 ish recharging points, and the UK pledged itself to go to 1.5 million by 2020. So it was not supposed to be inaccessible, let's say. Coming back to the annexes. So Annex 3 was the technical specifications. And as I said before, so you had for the first time all AC or DC plugs to be equipped with Type 2 connectors according to a standard which was developed by the CEN. And you had the same provisions for other fuel types, so hydrogen, CNG, LNG, or biofuels. And either the proposed directive was listing the existing standards to be used, or giving mandates to the Commission, well, giving the power to the Commission to adopt a mandate to require to ask the CEN to develop a new standard that would be used across Europe. Now, this was the proposed text by the Commission. Let's take a look now at what happened during the codecision procedure. So this won't come as a surprise for those of you who are familiar with the EU procedures, but basically since the proposal was released early 2013, all the member states, or most of them at least, focused their effort on getting rid of Annex 2 and the minimum requirement of recharging points per member state. The main reason for that was the issue of public funding, who's going to pay for this infrastructure, and the fact that they didn't want to be tied to a numbered objective. Surprisingly, or more surprisingly, the European Parliament, which is usually greener, or taking a greener stance than the member states when it comes to transport, was not asking for the deletion of the annex, but they were reducing significantly in their amendments the number of plugs required per country, to make it, again, on the grounds of the issue of public financing, to make it more achievable according to them. What happened eventually is that this Annex 2 was completely removed following the interinstitutional negotiations and the trialogues. So as of now, if you look at the published text, you won't see any numbered figure, well, for minimum recharging points per country, but simply a sentence saying that the member states should adopt an objective in their plans based on the number of electric vehicles in circulation or anticipated to be on the market in the coming years. So that, I think, is a shame, really. I don't think the numbers were unreachable. Certainly not once after the parliament reduced them. But that's just a personal opinion. You have to take also into account the context at the time of the even stronger economic and financial crisis. The only good news, so to speak, on that regard is that by 2025, the text gives the power to the Commission to propose an amendment to the directive if the number of available recharging points is not deemed sufficient. But again, it will go to Codecision, and we'll have another round of debate on the numbers, etc. So we'll see. And that is still like in 10 years' time. Among the other noticeable changes, there was some flexibility given for member states to adopt Type 2 or to convert recharging points to Type 2. So it was delayed for 2017 for all recharging points, be it slow or fast ones, and they were given some flexibility for other plugs. So as long as you could ensure compatibility with Type 2, at least, at the very minimum, you could still have the other plugs like the CHAdeMO one, for instance, being used. So, well, that is common sense. Among the other provisions that were severely watered down by the compromise reached, the deadline for the installation of hydrogen was extended to 2025, and the mileage requirement was removed. Same for the LNG, CNG requirements. It was also delayed by an extra 5 years, and with the numbers left to member states' discretion, basically. So that is what you can find in the text now. The whole procedure was concluded in October 2014 after the agreement reached in March between the Parliament, the Commission, and the Council. So the member states were given 2 years to transpose it in their national law. So that's what this webinar is particularly relevant, because the deadline is actually November this year. If you look at the countries that have officially transposed the text, so meaning that the measures have been adopted and the Commission has been made aware of the transposition, you have only 4 of them: Austria, Germany, Lithuania, and Spain. But many others have the text in the pipelines. We'll have a clearer picture once the deadline is passed in November. The Commission was even talking about giving some flexibility for some aspects of the directive because of the ongoing work on the standards, namely for fuel labeling provisions, consumer information. Reporting and review. So as I said, the transposition deadline is November. At the same time, the member states are supposed to submit to the Commission their national policy framework plans, and the Commission then will have a year to assess them and provide a report. Then you'll have, well, then it's the cyclic thing is that in 3 years' time you have another report on where the member states stand by November 2019. By 2020, the EC will start to provide reports on the applications of certain measures of the directive and potentially propose amendments. So depending, I didn't put the exact reporting here because it would be too long, but you can check it out on in the text itself. So between basically 2020 and 2025, you have a review of a certain number of the proposals and of the requirements, and if basically it's always the same line, is that if the actions taken by the member states are deemed insufficient, the Commission can propose corrective measures. Still on the implementation, so the Commission has created in 2015 a working group, an expert group called the Sustainable Transport Forum, to support it and try to foster the application of the package as a whole, and to facilitate the implementation of the DAFI directive, of the DAFI. You can, for those of you who are familiar with these expert groups, you can notice that there's been at least a good year between the time of the adoption of the directive and the setup of this expert group, which says a lot about the organization and the efficiency of the Commission sometimes. So it's a merge of two existing groups, which are aware, the expert group on future transport fuels and the one on transport environment. So it will gather both stakeholders and the member states. You can have, when you get the presentation, if you click on the link, you get the full composition of the group. And it's been divided into 4 subgroups, working groups. One on advanced biofuels, one for the creation of an e-mobility market of services, one on alternative fuels in cities, and finally one on the implementation of the directive itself. What I can tell you now of the work that has been going on in this group is basically that there have been quite a few meetings, but it's been mostly a platform for dialogue, exchange of information, best practices, without, I would say, real tangible deliverable until very recently. I think it's now finally 2 years after the adoption of the DAFI, entering a more proactive phase. The work is focusing on making sure that the reporting and by the member states on the national policy frameworks is streamlined, that the definitions are aligned, that the guidelines are the same across Europe, and also to identify and propose areas where further standardization work is needed to ensure the interoperability across Europe, because that is of course the basis for EU action in that respect, to make sure that someone that travels from one country to another can plug his car or his motorbike or in any recharging station. So what's next after the DAFI directive 2 years after? As most of you would be aware, the Commission has released a new strategy, not only on alternative fuels, but to reduce transport emissions overall, following the COP21 agreement. So it's called European Strategy for Low Emission Mobility. So it takes stock of the actions that have been taken in the framework of the Clean Power for Transport package and DAFI. And it lays down the provisions or the new actions that the Commission intends to take. So they want to develop, for instance, methodology for price comparison of alternative energy sources in 2017. The aim here is to say that people, when they buy a vehicle, look at the price of the EVs and they then get scared. Whereas if you compare it to the price of raw on the usage between fuel and electricity, you would actually see that EVs are much more affordable than what people think. They want to assess the need to adjust the existing financial instruments at EU level to ensure that there is cross-border investment projects for the charging infrastructure, and that include the FC, which is this new project by Juncker Commission to have strategic investments. They want also finally to assess the possibility to promote the installation of electric charging points in both private and public buildings within the proposals for energy market design and the revision of the EPBD, which is the buildings requirements that is coming up soon as well. So overall, in this communication, the Commission stresses the need to improve the efforts to create finally an e-mobility service market. Again, reinforce the cross-border interoperability of payments, having real-time information on charging points, and it also lays down the next round of standards that should be adopted, namely the induction charging batteries and common recharging plugs for buses and motorbikes. Now that the one for cars is fully enforced. You have other provisions in that communication that will have an impact on alternative fuel vehicles. So like the car labeling directive, which is going to be reviewed to make sure that it's even more interesting to buy or to give the possibility for member states to reinforce the attractiveness of EVs compared to conventionally propelled cars. Among the other initiatives that will support the market uptake, you can list the post-2020 CO2 standards for cars and vans, which should lower the emissions of CO2 to around between 75 and 80 gram per kilometer. That's my guess. Nothing has leaked from the Commission yet. Decarbonization of fuels with a new electrification strategy that is also expected. RDE and WLTP introduction, which are new test procedures to reinforce the test for the emissions of cars will also have an impact. There's a webinar online on this already if you wanna check it out on the Leonardo Energy program. Car labeling directive already mentioned, and finally energy union strategy. So again, electricity market design, renewable energy directive that will be reviewed. The aim here is also to start looking at the possibility of having electric cars, electric vehicles in general, to be able to store energy at peak time and to be used or how to integrate them as kind of auxiliary batteries, so to speak. In the light of all these initiatives that are coming up soon, you have new, or let's say old coalitions that are reforming, and I just wanted to single out one of them, which is the most active at the moment, and that is the Platform for Electromobility. I saw that we have some of the members online. I saw somebody from TNE, among others. So basically, this platform was already existing at the time of the discussions on DAFI, but it's been relaunched after a couple of years of being more discreet, let's say. So it's really open to a lot of stakeholders, provided that you pledge to support the objective of the platform, and it involves industry stakeholders, so the likes of Renault, Nissan, CR, which is the train industry, and many others. I won't list them all. You have also NGOs like TNE that I just quoted, and also what you call public authorities like the police network. And the aim is really that to push for stronger action by the EU to support the rollout of
electric vehicles as a whole, not talking only about car here, but also trains, electric bikes as well even, and so on and so forth. So it's time to conclude this webinar. I'm almost on time. Conclusions. What is the real impact of DAFI? That's the tricky question. So here we're going to get into the personal judgment. Of course, since it's not the transposition deadline is for November, and not all the member states have adopted their plans or transposed it yet. It's a bit too early still to assess the real life impact. What we can say is that if we look at the graph, you have an increase in registrations of alternative fuel vehicles since the adoption of the tax. Now, is it due to the adoption of the DAFI itself? I don't think so. However, I think that despite the fact that the provisions from the Commission, which for once were quite ambitious, and despite them being seriously watered down by the Council and the Parliament, it still sent out a good signal to the market, more than to end up to the end users, but to the market, especially when it comes to things like common standards for interoperability and the Type 2 plug, which because even though the provision is only coming into force in a few years, well, next year actually, the fact that it's written black on white that in Europe the plug is Type 2, this still forces the industry already to use Type 2 widely and not to invest in other technology and then battle about who's got the better plug type. The market uptake, I think, for electric vehicles is really driven by a combination of pull and push triggers. It's not rocket science. Most of you who are familiar with EVs will know it. Better incentives, that is, technology improvements, which are still required. You have also disruptive players such as Tesla that have pushed the big OEMs, historical OEMs, to invest more in these technologies. So that's on one side, but on the other side, the real let's say push as well is more stringent emission requirements that will eventually bridge also the price gap between electric vehicles and conventional cars, which are becoming increasingly more expensive to depollute, especially now that the new requirements like RDE, WLTP will come into force. There are still a lot to be done though to really create a market for electric vehicles. Hybrids are doing better and better, but battery electric vehicles are still really lagging behind, I think. And that is battery autonomy. I think now it's the key, and the creation of a second-hand market that is being probably discussed a bit by the GER 2030 high-level group are two keys, among others, that will allow the rollout of the electric vehicles. That's it for me. Thank you very much, at least for the presentation. And now I look forward to your question and answers.